Hello everybody, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. I am Caleb, and today I am going to be reviewing the book Assassin's Creed: The Secret Crusade by Oliver Bowden. This is one of the many Assassin's Creed tie-in novels for the Assassin's Creed video game series. I believe this was the third one published, even though the first half of it or so is based on the very first Assassin's Creed game, while the rest of it follows events taking place in other games, which I'll get into in a little bit. This book, as you can see on the cover here, if you're familiar with the video games, follows Altaïr, who is the character that you play as in the first Assassin's Creed game, and also for sections of Assassin's Creed Revelations, which I believe is the fourth game in the series. And it follows basically his entire life story. So parts of this book are based on the first Assassin's Creed game, parts of it are based on his sections in Revelations, and there may be parts that are wholly original to this book. So I guess for some good things about this book, first of all, I'd say it's overall a very enjoyable read. I was a little unsure about it because, at least in my experience, sometimes adaptations and novelizations of video games or movies or what have you, for me at least, are not always fantastic. It can be sometimes maybe kind of restrictive in terms of what you can really do with them because you're adapting a story from another medium, which in itself presents, I'm sure, plenty of challenges. But I thought this one was done really well. The story that is presented within the video games already, I think, is quite solid, so adapting it is, it's still a good story even if it's in a different medium. I really liked how this kind of gave a little bit more insight into Altaïr as a character, of course, with it taking place largely from his perspective. You kind of get a little bit more into his head and all that kind of thing. I feel like a lot of what is in here is largely implied in the video games, so it's not anything really new, I think, but it was still nice that it was there. And even though I knew the story of this book going into it because I have played the first several Assassin's Creed games, I have not played all of them, but I played a good half or maybe more of them. So I knew the story going in, but it was still enjoyable to read. It's been a little while since I played the first games in the series, so it was kind of a nice refresher, and it was still enjoyable and fun to read, even though I kind of knew generally how things were going to go. And I suppose now I'll talk about what this book actually covers, because I'd like to talk a little bit about the structure of the book. It's very different from what I kind of expected. I mean, given what I knew about what this was adapting, I kind of had an idea, but it's not really a typical narrative structure, kind of a usual like 3-act narrative structure, anything like that. Because the first half of this book adapts the first video game. A lot of the first video game and subsequently the first half of this book take place in like Jerusalem and Damascus and a couple of other places, kind of that area of the world, kind of in the Holy Land. And so he is a master assassin in that area. He makes some poor decisions. He's brought down to a novice level and has to kind of work his way back up by assassinating 9 individuals who are Templars, which is essentially the enemy of the assassins. There's a whole bunch of lore stuff behind that conflict, which I won't get into for the sake of, first of all, spoilers, but also for the sake of time. But he has to assassinate those people and, kind of grows along the way as a person. And that's basically the first half of this book. So pretty much, even though the first half of this book is maybe like the length of maybe a longer novella or something like that, it is basically a complete story. And then there's 4 parts to the book, so that's the first part. The second part is another section that I don't believe is shown in any of the games, where he goes on a mission shortly after the events of Assassin's Creed 1. And then the third section is, and the third and fourth sections actually are both based on his sections in Assassin's Creed Revelations, where he has some issues with others within the Assassin's Brotherhood. It's a bunch of stuff which I won't get too much into for spoiler reasons if you decide you want to read this or play the video games or either one or whatever. But it's a very different sort of structure. Kind of, I think, multiple short stories is kind of the way I would describe this. The first half is basically like a novella, and then the last 3 parts are kind of short stories, on the longer side for short stories, but still short stories. So it's very unique structure, and I actually really liked it a lot. And ultimately the structure does work because this is meant to be Altaïr's life story. It's not meant to be, you know, just one section of his life. It's multiple parts of his life kind of put all into one novel. So it works, I think. As far as more negative points, there's really not a whole lot, but one thing is the second section of this book, which again is kind of after the first half of the book, is, as far as I'm aware, the only wholly original part of the book. There may be like other bits and pieces here and there that are completely original, but I think that section is completely original, not included in any of the games. There is a section in Assassin's Creed 2 where you play as Altaïr that might tie into it, but I don't really know. I think it does tie into it, but I don't think it's the exact events that are portrayed in the book. But anyways, I did not think that section was super interesting. I really enjoyed the first part of the book, which was based on the first game, and I really enjoyed the third and fourth parts of the book that were based on sections of Assassin's Creed Revelations. The second part, I just was not as interested in it. It was still good, it was still an enjoyable read, but it was probably my least favorite part of the book. And the only other big negative I would say is kind of 2 in 1. So on the cover here, which I assume you can maybe kind of see, it says The Untold Story of Altaïr the Master Assassin. Untold story. Now, to me, that implied that there would be more original content in this book than there was. Not that I didn't enjoy reading the book and the adaptation side of it, which was done very well and I thought was really enjoyable, but I expected and hoped for more new stuff. And I do think that that statement on the cover, at least if you are already familiar with Assassin's Creed, and have played the games and everything, you're going to see that and think, oh, this is going to maybe adapt parts of the games, but then there's going to be a whole bunch of new stuff as well. And that's just not the case, so I think it's kind of misleading. So that's pretty much all I have to say for positives and negatives. One other thing I do want to discuss briefly, because this is a tie-in novel that adapts the video games largely, I want to talk for a minute about, do I think that you could still enjoy this book if you have not played the games? Now, I think most of the people, the vast majority of people who will want to read this book are probably people who have played the games and enjoyed them, as is the case for myself and many others who I've seen review this book and things like that. But let's say you just really like tie-in novels, or you're interested in this series, but you're not necessarily a gamer, you just think the setting is interesting or whatever it may be, and you just want to read the books. I think it is pretty enjoyable just on its own. I think that playing the games will probably help because it's easier to, you know, visualize things or things of that nature. You kind of maybe get a little more kind of an idea of what's going on. But I think it is absolutely possible to enjoy this book without having played the games. Of course, it's hard for me to say that with certainty because I have played the games, but I think that at least as far as I can tell, it's probably still going to be enjoyable even if you haven't played them. So that's basically all I've got for you for this video. Let me know down in the comments if you have read this book or any other books within the Assassin's Creed tie-in novel series, of which there are many. I believe there's at least 10 or 15 tie-in novels. So there's quite a few of them, and I do intend to read more of them. So let me know if you have read any of them or are interested in reading any of them, or this one in particular. And that is pretty much all I got for you today, so thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.